Welcome to Simply Caroline, a podcast dedicated to women empowerment where we will discuss a bunch of different subjects such as life, parenting, love, business, money, relationships, healing, recovery, addiction, entrepreneurship, and so much more. A podcast I'll do my best to keep simple, fun, and relatable and bring you tools to help you better your life. So thank you for being here. And here's your host, myself, Caroline Blanchard. Hello, everyone, and welcome back with us again. Today, I have such a special person with me, someone I met on Instagram and absolutely love, Brittany Ginsburg. How are you?
I'm great.
Did I butcher your name?
No, actually, that was perfect.
Okay. You know, with the accent and everything, sometimes I do a numbers on me.
I can imagine.
Brittany, I'm so happy to have you here. And today we are in our series of talking about sobriety. We're launching a book this weekend, actually, that is called That Party is Over. And Brittany is one of the co-author. Thank you so much. So she's sharing very vulnerably and authentically her story on how she became sober and what led her to make those choices. But before going into that, Brittany, talk to us a bit about you right now, today. What are you doing? How are you? Where are you at in life?
I am great. So in my recovery, I kind of got to a point about a year in where I was like, you know what, I kind of want to do more. So I did a little bit of digging and I created a nonprofit called the Pink Cloud Connect. It's based out of Chelmsford, Mass. And basically we work with anyone in Massachusetts all around everywhere. And we're focused on relapse prevention. So trying to create an exciting, engaging recovery community to keep people from relapsing. And that has actually helped my recovery so much. Like, I feel like I've reached another level in my recovery where I'm kind of relearning all the lessons. Like, it's the same lessons I'm learning, but in deeper meanings a little further on. So yeah, it's been great. It's so rewarding to be able to help other people and to feel like I'm good at something other than knocking back all the shots. So it's a really cool experience to be an adult functioning in society and doing good.
Well, and congratulations. Like, this is not a small feat to just decide, hey, I'm starting a nonprofit. You say it so casually, but I know the amount of work that there is behind that. And it's not easy. And I'm sure that financially and everything, it's not easy because, let's face it, it's a nonprofit. It's not there for you to make money. And like every human being, you have bills to pay. So, congrats on that. And we'll come back to that a bit later if people want to, support you and all of that. But let's talk a bit about, first of all, and I want to say, you said something that broke my heart like in a second, because it's something that we feel so much, us people in recovery, when you said, I feel like I'm good at something. It is a common thread amongst people who are in addiction that we feel like we're not good at anything, or we're not worth much else than when we actually drink, because our sober time, when we are in the drinking habits, quite often we feel like poop, just to keep it rated. But you are worth a lot. And talk about, how did you get to realize that you were worth more than getting wasted every day?
Right. That's such a good question. So at first, I feel like the way that I began to see a little more positively, like I had to just reframe my thinking altogether. So personally for me, just to tell the listeners, keep everyone up to speed, I'm 21 months sober, and I went into rehab. That was my path. Everyone takes a different path. But for me, I was in rehab, and one of the skills that they taught me was to write a grateful list before bed and in the morning. So that was kind of the first thing to make me realize like what all I do have. I could sit there all day. Before, when I was out drinking, I would just pick myself apart about surface level things and just really spiral with it. And now I'm able to, like, because I've changed my thinking into seeing more of the positive and forgiving others, and allowing myself some grace and being a little more gentle with myself. It's really changed my view on everything. And yeah, before I was just like super insecure, and throughout like each little hurdle along the way, like, oh, this is my first Thanksgiving. Okay, it was hard, it was terrifying, I was scared, and then I got through it sober. And then that's a little star for me for the week. And then I have that little confidence star in my gut, like just for me, no one can take it. And that's the beautiful thing in recovery, is that I think for a lot of us, we are searching so hard to fit in elsewhere, and we're just not able to accept ourselves as who we are. So we're so mean to ourselves. So to finally be gentle with myself and understanding and allowing myself to go into a situation. Yeah, I might not be perfect at something the first try, but I'm a human. Hello. What would you say to your best friend? You know, I kind of started thinking like that, and it's completely changed my life.
And that's such a key point. I have a friend who, whenever I would say stuff about myself, he would be like, "Can you not talk like that about my friend?" Because I don't
Love
like
that.
it. And at first I was just like, wow, he's weird. Can you
Yeah.
just stop doing that? And like, I don't know, when you do the most simple things, like, I don't know, you'll put makeup on and you're like, oh my gosh, it looks so awful. I'm not good at putting makeup, or I don't know how to do this. Or we keep talking to ourselves like we would not talk to someone else. Like if you
Right.
would do the same thing, I wouldn't be like, oh my gosh, you're such an idiot. Why are you doing that? I wouldn't say that, but we talk to ourselves like that. And that's a huge, whether you're in recovery or not, whether you have a drinking problem or addiction problem or not, this is one of the first things to work on, just to appreciate life a bit more. But you said it, talk to yourself like you would talk to your best friend. And
Yeah.
or like I say to parents, like for me that was a big one. Someone told me that, and that's how I started. Would I say that to my 5-year-old? Like, oh my gosh, you're ugly today. Like, what were you thinking dressing like this? I would never say that, because I love her too much. So to learn how to love ourselves and not talk to ourselves like that. And sorry, that was such a side note, but
No, I love it.
I find it so important, because our voice in our head is with us all the time. So, Brittany, how, let's talk about your first drink. How did you start drinking, and when did you realize that, it was a problem?
Mhm. I started drinking, I was probably like 13. I don't really remember exactly. But I know that by the time I was 15, I had alcohol poisoning. So sometime in between there, and it wasn't because like I had just never drank and it was like my first time drinking. It's because I drank in excess multiple nights in a row and then ended up with alcohol poisoning. But the very specific time that I remember looking back on, for drinking for effect, was sitting in my friend's basement, and like I went straight for the hard stuff always. So I just had vodka and a shot glass, and thinking back, it's so sad to think about, like probably 14-year-old Brit just down in my friend's basement. And I remember having the thoughts of being like, well, if I can't taste it after I have like one or two real quick, because my mouth is just burning. So I just went shot for shot for shot. And that was like a year before that alcohol poisoning at 15. So you could kind of see right from the get-go the progression. And I do have alcoholism in my family. My dad still is a heavy alcoholic. And it like you would, it's just interesting because I had a heads up. I definitely had a couple of warning signs very early on. And no, I just loved it. I would go to counseling. I knew something was wrong with me. I knew I was not right, but any doctor or professional that I would seek advice from would always recommend cutting back on the drinking. And I thought they were absolutely out of their mind. And I'm like, no, you give me a pill and you're going to make me normal, make me have confidence. And it's just interesting because all of those times that I wanted the confidence, it wasn't for me, actually. So in hindsight, I'm happy that there isn't a magic pill that you can just take so that I can drink and also be confident, because I wanted to be confident to impress whatever dude I wanted to impress at that moment, and for very like superficial reasons. So now when I want to be better, it's for myself, and it's not superficial. It's how can I better myself and what will that do to benefit myself and others in a good way. So instead of being like hating myself because I had a split end, like just ridiculous surface level stuff, I'm able to love myself and like nurture myself and kind of grow into a better person.
Yeah, and I know that there's different school of thoughts on that. Like some say that alcoholism is genetics. Some say that it is a disease. Some say that, no, it's not a disease. And we're not here to make do a debate here, because I respect everyone's opinion and you see it how you want it. But there is a big part of me that does think some people have it and some people don't, and some people can develop it. But I look at the 12 people in the book, and we all have really different stories, but that are all very similar at the same time. And to start chasing a buzz when you're 13 or 14, and to go straight for the hard stuff. And, because I don't know, I know I had some friends that were so careful with everything, and I was like the extreme of like, no, let's go to the end. So you see that there's something that it's in us when we're younger. And, yes, you get warning signs, but clearly when you're a teen or a young adult, you think you're invincible.
Yes.
And it won't happen to you. Everyone else is idiots for doing whatever they're doing, but you got it under control. So when did you realize, or what happened for you to realize that, no, you didn't have it under control? Because clearly the alcohol poisoning didn't ring a bell for you.
Right. Yeah. The alcohol poisoning did not ring a bell at all. And it actually, so I'm sorry. So what was the question? I got sidetracked on a side story.
No, it's okay. I was saying, like, what really, made you think, okay, it's enough. I'm destroying myself, or this is not good. Like, I'm sure it's not one single thing, but how did you get into that process?
So again, like for myself, I was always like searching for that self-confidence elsewhere. So I think I had a lot of codependency problems. So for me, a lot of the times, my angry outbursts on a bender would be a result of me in a relationship and me reacting to like different scenarios. And so anytime that I would have like a really bad freak out, that would be the next day when I would have like unbearable anxiety, that I'd be like, listen, I have a problem. I would seek out treatment. I would go to a counselor, or I would try to get a counselor appointment. And then there's usually like a little grace period that you have to wait. And by then I'd be self-medicated and going back at it. So there was a lot of times looking back that I can so easily say, yes, problem, yes, problem, yes, problem. But in the moment, like I've lost countless jobs because of drinking. And it's not even that I was getting busted for drinking at work. It's that someone would have Bruins tickets and I'm already day drinking before work. Why would I go into work? So like the logic, the rational thinking and my priorities were just totally off. I could begin to see it when as I got older, like past college, like through my 20s, in my late 20s, I started missing things. Like there would be Thanksgiving dinner and I'd go have some drinks with my friends before, but then that turns into it's the next day, what I just missed. And so it really has it ended up putting a strain on a lot of my relationships and people who cared about me. Because if anyone said I had a problem, then they were not my friend anymore. So yeah, it's very interesting.
Yes. Well, that's one big thing that we do when there's an obstacle to our using, we will remove the obstacle. So if that obstacle is a person, well, you tend to, and it's funny because in another podcast, and funny is the wrong word here, but in another podcast, we were talking about that, about how when you become sober, you tend to feel like you're alone because most often you've been surrounding yourself with people that will enable your behavior or accept it. So then you feel like, oh, I'm alone in the world that wants to be sober, but it's just because you've created this environment so well. And you just said it there, when people were opposed to you drinking, well, you would remove them. So you end up keeping only what's allowing you to be that person that really you don't want to be. And I want to point out one thing that you said. It's funny because, and I have to stop saying it's funny. It's not funny. People, if you have another word to you put in my vocabulary there, it's ironic that, a lot of people will be drinking because they have anxiety issues and self-confidence issues and trauma that they're trying to self-medicate. But when you really look at alcohol, it is causing anxiety. So the next day is awful. Oh. You just said it there. Like, talk to us about that. One of those days that, you're like, I'm
just going to take a sip of water. Sorry, my mouth is so dry. That's one thing in recovery that, and now I think about things. Before, I used to not have to think if my mouth is dry. So before, when I would do something like really crazy, like when I say crazy, I guess I'll give you some examples. Like I would get drunk and I was so insecure and worried about myself. So everyone else seemed like a threat to me and to my relationship, which was my only thing that I ever lived for with any of the relationships. So I would end up like completely irrationally lashing out. For example, like one of my boyfriends one time said to my little brother that the girl on his screensaver was hot and it was Kate Upton. Well, I lost it. Like we were at the Boston Marathon watching my stepdad run the Boston Marathon and I went home, like I destroyed the sign I made for him. Somehow this anger about another girl's beauty bled out onto everyone's day. And I said some of the worst things that you could say to people. I loved to text horrible things. I always said if they invented like a breathalyzer for texting, that I probably wouldn't even be sober right now because no one would know, because I loved to hide behind my phone and just let my basically like subconscious mind or whatever trauma or anger just freak out. So the next day would be a gut-wrenching, just like knife in my stomach, racing thoughts, just nonstop. And then I would just drink about it because that's the only thing. Once I got so far removed from my people, like, and it started becoming a regular thing, oh, Brittany's missing this, Brittany's missing that, then you separate yourself. There's only so much that they can do. So, yeah, those next days were brutal. I do not miss that. And I'll tell you, I wrote down in my journal in treatment, it was the first week, and I wrote something along the lines of, I found a new calm in sobriety, or a new sense of peace in sobriety. I've never felt so still when I wake up in the morning. And that was so beautiful. I almost like wish I could experience again, but I don't want to. Just to have that sense of relief that you don't even know exists because you've never experienced it because you've just been messing with your head so bad. So it's unreal to be able to get through those things with something so simple as just stopping doing something.
And you know what, listening to you, it's we hear stories sometimes, and it always feels like the stories we hear is, well, that's not me, and or that person has an issue. I'm not that bad. But you hear those stories about people doing erratic stuff and then apologizing for it. And I'm saying that because I had girlfriends who had boyfriends who did stuff, and the first time you're like, oh my goodness, why, blah blah blah, and then after the 10th time you're like, well, listen, girl, like he will apologize and do it again, so just stop. And just go away or whatever. But the thing is, I do believe that when people do these things and they apologize, they are sincere 100%. But there's something stronger than you that will push you at doing it again. And and then again, I just said something that some people I can hear them arguing against, like, no, you're in control of yourself, like control yourself. There's nothing stronger than you. But that is what addiction is. And that is what I find is so misunderstood. There is something that feels stronger than us because our mind knows, don't do it.
Right.
And you can talk to yourself, but until you take drastic measures, it's impossible to fight it, or then you have some bursts of like, I'll control myself. I'll only drink on Fridays and Saturdays. And then that goes for a bit until one Wednesday something happens and you're like, well, just Wednesday this week. So talk a bit about that. Did you have that phase of like wanting to control yourself?
Yeah, I had it a lot of times. I would try, like how you said, controlled drinking. I think for me also, like, again, it always goes back to like the surface level stuff. Like, I would want to stop drinking because I wanted to look good in a bathing suit for a vacation coming up, and think that that will help that. So in hindsight, I was actually just destroying myself because I would stop for a few days. Like, I would say Friday, Saturday, that's when I'm drinking. Get to, like you said, Wednesday, and then I'm like, oh, all right, I'll go out to eat, and I'd be dieting. So I'm like, oh, I'll just have a martini, and just one isn't an option. So then 3 days later, I'm like so hammered because I hadn't eaten anything and just drinking like crazy. So it was hard to try to maintain because, just like you said, that urge is there. And at the time, there's no other reasoning in my head. Like, I didn't know that this life existed on this side of things. I truly, all of my emotions that I had felt up to that time, that was like the threshold of emotions that I was able to access. And for me to not to be like numbing all those negative emotions all those times, then they would just like naturally be coming out late night. So yeah, I don't know. I really can't even say I know of like a 2 week period that I lasted. I think there was maybe like a 2 week period one time in my 20s that I lasted, but it's just so crazy to think back on. I like, this is in real time that I'm realizing this, that it's just like the post-acute withdrawals symptoms or whatever, those must have just, it's too unbearable. And I almost feel that a lot of people are struggling just getting out of that first loop, because I wasn't aware of things like that. So when I was feeling on day 4 of not drinking, when I'm feeling a little agitated and a little snappy, that's not because I'm irrational and mean without alcohol. That's because my body's not used to not having the alcohol yet. So for me, it was very like everything was short, like not short distance, but like I'm only looking like very close into the future. I'm not looking too far off back then. Yeah.
And I think that that's another common thread I feel with people who suffer from addiction is we don't see a future. You know, our future is our today, maybe tomorrow, but I remember being asked, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I was just like, somewhere, somewhere. And I have to say that I had a good life. I have, you know, I was a high functioning alcoholic. So it's not like I lost things or I didn't show up. I did show up to, you know, I was the opposite of you. I did show up to everything. So that didn't make me lose stuff, but I still, like you said, I was so short sighted. Like, even I have kids, and the only thing I could see were my kids in the future, but I couldn't see myself beside them. I could just see them. So it's hard to, you know, when you're in that cycle of addiction, it's hard to project a better future because you don't even see a future.
Right. It's so crazy that you said that because I was driving in the car the other day, and that's usually when I have like deep thoughts. And I was just like, wow, this is the first time that I've noticed that I'm so excited for the future. Like, I have things that I am looking forward to in that 1, 3, 5, 10 year mark that never before I could never say that. Like, it's so weird that you just mentioned that because I never had long-term goals. My long-term goals were to just have fun. And the ironic thing is over here it's a lot more enjoyable actually and fun than I ever would have thought. And I'm staying sober, so there's obviously a lot more benefits in the recovery world. So yeah, so weird.
And we're gonna come back to this in a minute because, you know, that's the point of the book as well, is to share how we are now thriving in sobriety. And I know that when I was in my addiction, I could not even comprehend the idea of someone not drinking. You know, for me, that was not a life. It's like, I don't know, if there wasn't wine at supper, I could not even understand why they would eat supper. You know, it's like the world was really reversed. But let's go back to, you know, you talked about codependency and you talked about, you know, surface level stuff. And you say it's surface level stuff like, I want to look good, my hair needs to be nice, I want to fit in my bikini, you know, stuff like that. Or this girl, I can't believe you found her pretty. And I can relate to what you're saying so much. But that comes from something deeper than that. So, do you know what triggered you to hate yourself so much?
Um, yeah. Well, I don't know what triggered me. I think that growing up, like, I had the best childhood that I possibly could have had with like all cards dealt, and my mom is amazing. But I think that where my mom had me a little younger, maybe I think that I had my like little subconscious brain when I got sober had a lot of misinterpreted information going on back there. So I think that a lot of it was me just kind of trying to figure life out on my own without getting much guidance on confidence and how to talk to yourself or any of that. So a lot of my memories are just me comparing myself to others. So in high school, I used to dye my hair as black as I could because I always thought women with dark features like yourself are so beautiful and I admire. So I literally would try to look like that. My brain truly thought that that's how I will be liked because if I look like this girl in my head. So it's like sick and so weird. But for the first time ever, like at age 31, when I turned 31 in rehab, that it took a few months, but that's the first time that I was able to be like, I'm more than just like, it's almost been opposite now. Like I had bartended for a little bit when I was in recovery, and I'd get the people making comments about looks and stuff like, oh, call me beautiful or something. And I'll be like, don't say that. Like, I have a soul in here. Do you know who I am? And so it's just the opposite, because little Brit would have loved that. I would have ate that right up. I'd be like, tell me more. But yeah, I'm not sure exactly where that comes from. I know I have myself some daddy issues, so maybe that's it. What do you think?
Well, that, it's really probable, and I'm asking you because sometimes we know where it comes from, and sometimes we don't, and that's a bit the message that I want to pass across, because I've heard, all the comments in the books of like, well, if you have this, just fix it. There's some people that think that everything is about mindset and just be positive and fix it. But sometimes we don't even know what's wrong with us. And we just carry this heavy feeling of not belonging and not being at the right place and not looking the right way. And it's funny you say you like dark features, because when I was little, I had a lot of blonde streaks. And then when I got older and my hair got darker, so I dyed my hair blonde until I was like 18 or 19, because I thought that blondes were so much more beautiful. So isn't that funny? But I think that the end result is just like, you think that everything else than what you are is better. And because often, like, we carry this feeling around, not knowing. It feels like a black hole. And I think that we try to self-medicate that, because when we're using whatever, we're numbing this feeling, and we're like feeling like we're fitting in for a short period of time until you push it to the extreme. And it's at some point, the more you use the faster the extreme arrives. Like, there's no more good period. It's right. Like you go from 0 to 100 very fast and you crash, and then you're like, oh gosh, I did it again, or I said this again, or I made a fool of myself again. And then it's the getting up in the morning and trying to piece everything together and see, like, who do I need to apologize to, and so, yeah. But finally, what brought you to rehab? Like, when is that 1 to 100 crash you went like, it's enough? Did you have a crash, or you just realized like, I need to do this?
So I had a super duper crash, but I'll pedal it back real quick to 2016. 2016 was a year for me that I quit doing cheerleading, that I was doing all-star cheerleading until I was 26 competitively. Like, we went to worlds and stuff, and that was something that I think allowed me to be like presenting that I'm doing well to the world. But I was still drunk, but it was the one thing that I had, and I stopped. And that same year I had very consistent deaths. A very good friend of mine passed away, and then my grandfather, then my uncle, then another uncle, and then that daughter, my cousin, killed herself. So it was one after another. And I, at that point, that saying YOLO, you only live once, was there. And I took that to the fullest. And just ever since then, I kind of was just drinking like crazy. And then I was in a really long relationship. And when me and him broke up, that's when that is like a line in the sand of when I did not care. I didn't want to be living life, but I didn't want to die. So like, and you hear that all the time. And it's so true, because then at that point, I just rapidly picked up the pace, and I was drinking so hard just to cope with the pain of being alone. It's like it all came crashing down on me that, hey, you got to deal with this. So I had a friend reach out to me the October before I went into rehab. I went in February, and she was just like, you're getting out of hand. You got to go to treatment. We go to the same therapist. So she was like, I already talked to our therapist. He agrees. We have different options. She's in recovery. So she was laying it out for me. That planted a seed in my head. And I went home. By this point, I'm dating some other guy that's basically a drinking buddy. And I go home to his house and tell him. And he's like, you're not an alcoholic. Absolutely not. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. Take a shot. Let's go. 4 months later, me and him break up. I go out for a drink because we broke up, and I live in Massachusetts, and I went to a towny bar, and then the next thing you know, I'm in Killington, Vermont, skiing, and I haven't skied since I was like 5. I snowboard, so like you can tell where I was at then. I got lost from my friends on the mountain, and my phone was dead, and I got a ride from a random stranger that luckily didn't kill me or anything, and found our hotel. And when we got to a lobby, there was random people there that we had met the night before, and there was like a pool table and stuff, and they had offered me cocaine, and I was partying, like doing it all that weekend, and so I did it. And then that night I couldn't sleep, like my heart was like racing so bad. So then we ended up going back. Somehow I got back to the North End in Boston outside of a parking garage, and I was locked out of my friend's apartment with all my stuff. And I ended up having to call that same friend who put the seed in my head back in that October conversation. And she came and got me and brought me straight to urgent care. And then they brought me into detox because I had fentanyl in my system from the cocaine. So when they read off the list of drugs in my system, and I've always been an alcoholic, heavy drinker. I've always dabbled in like drugs, I guess, but alcohol is the main thing. But to hear the list of drugs that was listed off from my just casual weekend away when I was sitting in detox, like they listed off Adderall, Xanax, cocaine, fentanyl, I forget, weed, and I forget what else. Like it was just like I heard it and I was just like, oh, like of course you're having heart palpitations and like dying right now. So that's where it all ended. And the irony with the whole thing was that like leading up to even going into rehab, I was like still concerned about the surface level things that I keep talking about. I'm like, okay, well, what about that guy that I just met like last night? What if he ends up like finding another girl? I can't go to treatment. And it's like, my friend said it perfect that day. She's like, there's going to be nobody, like your dog doesn't matter right now, Britt. Like these boys don't matter right now. If you're dead, none of this is going to matter. And you are so lucky to be alive. And I'm forever grateful for that conversation, because I was just like, okay, I have to go through the motions. Like I have to give this a shot. And then luckily by doing the work and actually like trying to learn a little bit more, I've been able to keep it this way, like keep myself sober. And even the hard days are not nearly as scary. Like yesterday was a horrible day for me. Like if I listed off the bad things, it sounds like I'm just making it up or just listing off excuses or something. And I was able, like I had a moment, like I broke down. I let myself cry now. And I bawled my eyes out for a couple hours, and I felt real feelings in that moment of anger, despair, sadness, hopelessness. And then I feel better like later in the day. I think at around 1 o'clock, I was absolutely miserable. I know this because I wrote some notes and then on my phone. And then by 4:30, I was complete turnaround. And if this had happened before, any one of those things on this list of grievances of my yesterday, any one item would have brought me to a bender. So it's the little silver linings like that now that are astonishing to watch, like to see myself going through the motions of like, it's like watching a little kid version of yourself. Like, yeah, there you go. You did it. But yeah, it was really scary going into treatment. That whole, I don't know, having a life, I don't know, because I have a lot of friends that have died multiple times and then they still aren't getting it. But for me personally, to have came that close to death and then to have known that somebody has to be like paying for the treatment that I'm getting, and that somebody else is on the street right now that would like kill for a bed, that's kind of where my line of respect, I maybe shouldn't say that because I don't want to say that, not respect, but I don't know, it was my line of respect for my own recovery. That was my boundary for myself, that I was not going to let myself have access to this amazing help and not at least try. So yeah.
I'm so proud of you. And like, thank you for sharing all of this, because I know that it's not easy and you're sharing it very well, but it does move a lot of emotions in you when you speak about all of that. But gosh, be proud of yourself, because you know what, you've done it and you've been sober ever since. And then you've decided to launch your fundraiser. What did I just say? That doesn't make sense. You launched your nonprofit. I said fun. Maybe because you need to do a fundraiser.
I do.
It's like the universe just sent that there. But you launch your nonprofit to help. And you know what? There's one thing that you said that I find so crucial, and not to judge anyone who didn't think about that or whatever. Like here, I just want to really make a point that we're talking about here now, not judging anyone around or how their story was different. But when I realized that I had a problem, well, that's decades ago, but I mean, when I accepted that I had a problem and phoned a rehab, I'm still in a good position and everything, but there was like about a year waiting period. And then I had an overdose, and my husband called from the hospital and said, she just had an overdose. Do you have a spot? And still I waited 3 months. And I was thinking, people on the street who really have no resources, how do they get help? How do they get into all of that? And whether it be the States or Canada or whatever, there's so many people who need the help, but it's, let's face it, it takes money. It takes money. So for you to realize, like, I have the luxury of being in rehab. And I think that's what I find sad when people have to go a few times, is they're not there yet and they don't realize, the amazing opportunity that is offered to them. Because let's face it, it's hard. It's hard. There's a lot of work. It will hurt at some point, because you also learn how to feel, which is one thing that we were master at, is stop feeling. But I mean, it's so much worth it. How long would you say that period of difficult and everything, like the period of like, oh my gosh, you kind of wonder, was that the right decision? How long did it last for you?
So I don't know if it's kind of been like a little sprinkles here and there along the way, I think. So at first, it's so weird because it sounds like it's a typical like addict response for me to say this, because it was almost like I was trying a new drug before anyone else I knew was. So like in a way, I kind of felt like special and like I'm being the test dummy in a way. So and I also was highly rewarded in a way by having people respect me right out of the gate, from just by simply removing the booze. People I've done unspeakable things to, or said unspeakable things to. I've never like hurt anyone. They just wanted to see me stop drinking. So
they gave you a chance like right away.
Yeah. So it's just people have been like, it went from me thinking so low of myself, and I've never had gotten that respect before. So when people started coming to me for advice and stuff, that happened pretty quickly. So I already felt the momentum of the good feelings. But then like 6 months into my recovery, I was at my best friend's wedding, and I wanted to dance. It's a wedding, but it was my first wedding, and I know that whole family. Like at her son is like 8 now or something. And at his baptism, I blacked out and the grandparents had to drive me home from like a christening or something. Like we were at church. Like, what are you doing? So I'm around all these people that have seen me at my worst. And I'm sitting there crying at the table, refusing to dance. Like I was just stuck. And that was one moment where I was like, this is stupid. Like, I don't know why I'm doing this. But again, like, luckily I have an amazing friend. One of my best friends, Renee, she pulled me outside. I yelled at her because I was like, this is stupid. You don't understand. You can have a drink and you don't even know. And it's almost like a hissy fit. And I have a tantrum. And then we walked it off and I walked in and I've never danced so hard in my life. And let me tell you, Backstreet Boys and NSYNC were on and I was jamming. I was sweating like crazy. You could not peel me off the dance floor. And I had so much fun sober. But I had to push through that one moment. But now moving forward, anytime those little moments that can turn huge when I'm basically crying because I can't drink, anytime I've had a feeling like that, I now know I was able to overcome it. So now it's kind of more like a breeze when I find myself coming across those moments.
Yeah, and like let's face it, even if you're in sobriety and thriving, there's still hard moments and there's still some cravings here and there. It's just that now your toolbox is fuller and you know how to deal with it. It doesn't mean that life is perfect after. It just means that we know, and I know that you're going through a challenging time, like building your nonprofit and everything now. But as opposed to what you would have done before, which would have been like probably numbing it and forgetting it and just moving on.
Yep.
Now you're facing it. It doesn't mean that it's easier or that magically everything will work out, but it does mean that, you're facing it and you have tools to deal with it. And crying is actually good.
So nice. I love it.
I know. I can't remember. I was listening to an actress saying that, and she was just like, yeah, I like to cry about every 3-4 days. It's just a good release. And I was just like, I don't cry. It's not coming out. But it's good that it comes out because it's just a different feeling. That's what we should, and quite often when you have a good cry after, it's like, for me anyway, things are clearer. It's like, oh, okay, now this cloud is gone. Now I can address the rest. So, Brittany, let's talk about your nonprofit right now. What is it doing exactly?
So initially when I first got sober, I had really only heard about AA or NA, Narcotics Anonymous. And I got some help in my first year of recovery. Like, for instance, I didn't even really know how to get myself set up on health insurance. I'm sure I could have, I'm capable of doing these things. I just hadn't done them in years. And like technology changes. And my friend Hannah, she is in recovery and she sat there with me and signed me up for health insurance, helped me get car insurance, got my car registered, like literally did the adult things with me and handheld me through it. And I, at the time, didn't know of any services that did that. So I started digging, and lo and behold, there's a bunch of amazing nonprofits out there that do that, exactly that, and help with rides to jobs. And so instead of creating all these programs that I initially thought I would be doing if I wanted to achieve this goal, I actually have just been partnering with all these organizations that already offer these amazing services and kind of just bringing them front of light, because where I'm like newer out of recovery and I'm open about it, I'm able to take the organization's information, go to the recovery community, be like, hey, I'm sober, I'm in recovery, let's try this, and kind of just like guide people to where they would best fit. And I guess, for example, I have someone I'm working with now, and he's like scarred for life from going to a 30-day program. And in his mind, that's the only option. That's what he thought was the only option for him to get sober. And so we tried a few different things, and like it was a little push and pull, and now like he's almost 90 days sober right now, which, you know, anything can happen anytime, but it does work for some people to just try out some different things and have just main human beings that are in recovery also and open about it to kind of help you sift through it. So that was a lot, but mainly what we're doing is creating events that are inclusive to all of the community. So you don't have to be any specific type of sober. You don't even have to be in recovery, but you can just show up to the events, and it's a fun time. But we're like in live time showing you how to interact with people in recovery. Maybe someone will grab information and they'll learn about something if their nephew overdoses the following year or something. So yeah, it's been a lot about like social change and just kind of breaking that stigma in the suburbs over here. Because my friends and people's kids are dying left and right, just because they have a stereotype of what an alcoholic is. So for instance, in the 4th of July parade, I marched in the parade in my town with like a recovery is possible shirt and a sign that said sober is better, because I'm like, whatever, I have nothing else to do, like,
Yeah, that's awesome. But I love what you're doing with the organization, because it is true that, you know, sometimes you want to get out of all of it, and it's not a lack of resources. Like, we have the internet now, so you can Google anything and have all the information you want. But you have to keep in mind that when you're at that place, your brain is not necessarily at its sharpest. Your confidence is not at its sharpest. Your energy level is not. So yes, sometimes you just feel like a kid and you want, you know, an adult to say, give me your hand, I'll walk you through what needs to be done. And I think that that's another common thread in a lot of stories that I've heard. Somehow, in some capacity, there was someone that said, okay, I'll guide you through it. And, you know, we're lucky if we got it, but that's basically what you're offering people. If you don't have that in your entourage, or sometimes you do have it, but you don't want to share.
Right.
So you don't want people around you to know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just easier to go with someone you don't know, someone, you know, who understands what you're feeling and what you're going through. And I feel like this is a huge part that I'm finding in the sober community, is that we build relationships faster because they're not built the same way as it used to. It's built more on something more solid, emotional, real, raw, you know, because we understand each other. Even if I didn't go through what you went through, there's a common thread that I do understand, and that I know if I would call you tonight and be like, I need to talk, you would probably drop everything and say, yes, I'm here to listen. And I would do it for someone else, because it's a different kind of relationships, you know?
Right.
So, and sometimes you do need to have that from strangers, because you do need to have that from people who are not assuming who you are.
Right.
People who don't know all of your past and all of the silliness you've done. You know?
Yeah.
Like, so anyway, Brittany, I love you, and this was amazing. And what is the name of your organization again?
The Pink Cloud Connect.
Yes. So Brittany needs help as well to, you know, keep on keeping on going with this organization. I'm going to put her information, but if you want to donate and support our organization in any way, you can reach out to her. If you want to read her full story, get the book on Amazon. That party is over, and then the new one is starting. No, that's not in the title, but that's my adding to it. And Brittany, what would you like to leave people with?
Well, something that you just said, actually, like the positive ripple effect that recovery has given me, like it's shown me a greater purpose in life. So by how we were saying, like I had a friend that helped me, whether it was a friend or a stranger, that's a positive ripple effect that's happening. That friend she had many near death instances. So it's a beautiful experience to be able to like to feel a part of. So I guess just if anyone's feeling like sad and low, just know that there really is a whole nother world out there that you've never even experienced before. Maybe you have in whatever, but um, it's life changing. You could not have told me that I would ever be sober. So to be staying sober and to be enjoying it is next level. And then on top of it, to be creating a positive impact that is then splintering throughout the world is unreal. And it's an amazing thing to be a part of. So thank you so much, Caroline. I appreciate you so much. And you gave me some advice about the hermit crabs in a bucket. Um, and about people in your past, how the hermit crabs are trying to get out. And that could be me, like trying to get out, and people from the past kind of just like not wanting change. And that has changed my total perspective. That has helped me so much. And I just appreciate you beyond, because I spoke with you one day that I just really needed someone, and you somehow said all the perfect words. So just another example of the ripple effect in real time. So thank
Well,
you.
I'm glad. And for those who are wondering that story, it's like crabs in a bucket. So quite often, well, not quite often, if you look at crabs in a bucket, and you can search it on YouTube, if one crab tries to escape, the rest of the crabs will actually grab it to bring it back with them. And quite often that happens in our life as well. When you want to change, or if you want to get out of toxic situation that you're in, some people will pull you to stay with them instead of just letting you go and find something else for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important to change what's toxic around you, and move on, and don't be that crab. Don't let people grab you back.
Yes.
Find other people that will be outside of the bucket and pull you out of there, because there's a lot of people that actually want to do that, and that want to help you just for the sake of helping you. That too, I never believed in that before, that some people were just doing stuff because they were nice. I always thought it was attached to something. And what Brittany is talking about, the ripple effect, now I totally believe in it. There are people out there who really just want to help because they want to help. They don't want anything else in return. So, find those people, connect with Brittany. You can connect with her on Instagram. I'll put her information as well, our website. Brittany, it was such a pleasure to have you. Thank you for being so real and honest. And to everyone who was here today, thank you so much for listening, and go get the book. It's 12 stories that are simply amazing, and you will be touched for sure. So thank you, and I will see you next time.